you have him 46. I have him 43. He was probably a top 15 starting pitcher in most rankings last year. It's Zac Gallen.
Yeah. What is happening, y'all? We're almost there. And with Zac Gallen, it's so tough. It's like Aaron Nola and Castillo. I was such a Gallen gal. And what's really annoying is that fastball just isn't that good. It's just not a good fastball. And his greatest strength is throwing this curveball that is the true death ball. I'm sorry, Jeff Passan, you got it wrong. It wasn't Jordan Montgomery. It was Zac Gallen on the other team that had the death ball in that World Series. And he gets it lower than any other pitcher. It's one of the highest low lock curveballs in the majors is Zac Gallen's, but he doesn't complement it enough. It used to be a situation where we had these called strikes on four seamers low, and then the curveball would go underneath, and guys couldn't tell the difference. There's also a changeup that can be very good, but it's not always there. Cutter and a slider that he's always trying to really figure out and not quite nail down, and it's just frustrating. I saw a 126 whip last year from Zac Gallen because he just lost the command of all this 8 to 9% walk rate. Like, what's going on? He lost strike rates on his fastball, dramatically lost confidence on that pitch, and the other stuff wasn't there to support him. I'm not saying that he can't get that back. They lost Christian Walker in Arizona, which doesn't help his hit per nine. That's always been around 8. And it might be still good because it's a good situation. They're going to let him go 6 innings. Good overall defense, just not as good. Should win some games and all of that. But for Zac Gallen, he's teetering on that, hey, I'm going to help you, right? It's very close to Aaron Nola and Luis Castillo. I think I have a little bit more faith in their arsenal than I do Zac Gallen's, because that 126 whip is just staring me in the face and saying, Nick, it's an 8 to 9% walk rate that probably should stay elevated versus the 5 versus or the 6 from previous years. The 8 hit per 9 is probably going to stick around. And that 25% K rate is, yeah, that's kind of who he is. It's going to be a little frustrating, I think, with Zac Gallen. And I've decided, you know what? I don't know if I really want to go after this at all.
Yep. I have learned to be weary of pitchers who give up a lot of hard contact. I think I ignored that too much last year. I'm trying not to ignore that this year. And so Gallen makes me incredibly nervous. Too much of his success for me relies on like sequencing and tunneling, and that makes me a little anxious. And so, yeah, I'm low on him. I think he's more of like a low end SP2 type of arm. I'm just going to move on because I'm really excited to talk about the next pitcher. And it's Yu Darvish.
Yeah.
And
Really
I listen, I am currently in an NFBC 50 draft, which is a 12-team draft and hold. In the 19th round, we're looking at pick 219. And I already have 5 starting pitchers. But again, draft and hold formats, you want to get lots of pitchers.
17, 18.
And I'm like, I think I'm going to take Yu Darvish here. And I'm realizing as I look at like the draft, it's like close to his max or his min pick. Like it's almost the highest anybody has drafted Darvish.
Yeah.
But I'm not so sure that I think we are misremembering what his year was last year.
Yeah.
And I'll just say very briefly what I put in my rankings. I have Yu Darvish ranked right now on my updated rankings. I have Yu Darvish 50th. So kind of like similar to where you're at. But I said he had a few injuries. He had that neck injury. He was placed on that with that mysterious personal issue where he was placed on the exempt list for an extended period of time, which I think makes us think that he missed more time with injury last year than he did, because it wasn't all injury. He was recovered from injury and then went on this exempt list. He had a 3.31 ERA and a 1.07 whip in 16 starts. That's just on the year.
Yeah.
If you took out the 2 starts in May before he went on the IL, which I know we don't really want to like pick and choose taking out starts, but we know with 100% certainty that in those 2 starts, he was pitching injured through that neck injury that he then went on the IL with. So if you were to take out those 2 starts, in 76 innings, he had a 2.47 ERA with 71 strikeouts.
That's also including the first game of the year, which was
Exactly.
in Korea?
Which was in Korea and was not particularly good.
No, I mean, that was just not even a real start. Yeah.
He has a deep arsenal of pitches. We know he can adjust depending on who he's facing. He leaned into the slider more in 2024, which is great because it's his best pitch. If he wasn't even a little bit of a health risk, I think you're ranking him much closer to 30. But he's 38 years old, and so you're banking on the fact that he'll probably spend some time on the IL this year.
Mm-hmm.
And so he then gets pushed closer to 50. But I think he's going to be very solid when he's on the mound this year.
Yeah. No, I'm completely with you. I'm even actually convincing myself right now maybe that I should put him above Hunter Brown because the IL part. I mean, really the biggest concern is how much are we going to see of him? Is he going to be hurt a bit? Does he still have 25% plus strikeout upside? I think he does. I think he still has the filthy things that he's always had. I think he's just a very solid pitcher when he's on the field. So I'm cool with IL spots. I am so in on health questionable pitchers because if it's an IL situation, then great. There's so many guys on the wire. Oh, you'll be fine. This is the deepest starting pitching pool we've ever seen, right? So, yeah, I'm pushing him up as I speak. So, yeah, I'm in.
He is an upside case, and a lot of people I think have him higher than this. It's Houston Astros starting pitcher Hunter Brown, who ended the season on an incredibly high note. I have been in conversations on Twitter where I pointed out he started 2023 also on an incredibly high note, not quite as high as he ended 2024, but we have seen Hunter Brown have really strong stretches, but continue to tinker with the pitch mix, continue to toy with how he's attacking hitters. I'm not quite convinced that Hunter Brown knows his preferred approach. It possibly is how he ended 2024, and that's great. And we could hit the ground running in 2025. But we've seen this in his major league stints before. And so I'm not fully ready to just say, hey, take the end of 2024 and carry it over. And that's Hunter Brown.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels weird that I'm so negative about Hunter Brown when I know that the industry is positive on him. And anytime I see that everyone else is different than I am on this, I always get weirded out. I'm like, oh gosh, what am I missing? Am I really looking too much at the underbelly and not saying, look, this is a 25% strikeout guy who just threw 170 innings for the winning Astros and a 3.49 ERA. And I get that everyone's also saying, look, the FIP backs it up, 358. This is great. Yeah, I get it, guys. But here's the thing. Hunter Brown doesn't have anything that's elite to me. It's a four-seamer sinker approach against righties that is good enough-ish. It gets the sinker inside to righties decently amount. And I think there's intrigue also with like the way that he mixes his cutter, four-seamer, and sinker. But I put this out on Twitter. There's this really amazing app with Max Bay that is the Dead Zone app. It essentially says, look, based on their arm angle and the movement that they get, batters are used to seeing certain pitches move to a certain place. Right. This is just when you release the ball from a certain angle, they're not expecting the same movement. They know, like, cool, if you know lower, that means it's going to get extra horizontal movement. Up top, you're going to get extra vert. Like, it's natural, right? So he essentially puts on the plot these blue circles that said this is where the natural movement is. And then he overlays it with the pitcher's pitches to say, like, all right, this is relative to the expected movement of the normal one. This is where actually it goes. All three of Hunter Brown's sinker, four-seamer, and cutter are dead zone. They're right smack in the middle of the expected spot. That's bad. That is not good. And then you say, okay, well then hold on, Nick. Then maybe the secondaries, like the breakers and the changeup, those are really the ones that do the stuff for Hunter Brown. No, those are not the good pitches. In fact, against right-handers, none of those were over a 10% usage last year. It was just sinkers, four-seamers, and cutters. He had a slider at 9%, a curveball at 9%. Neither of them were reliable pitches for him. And then against the lefties, we had the curveball and the changeup get used combined like 32% of the time, and neither of them had a strike rate over 60% or a swing strike rate above 16. And I'm weirded out. And I thought about this for a moment. I was like, man, how often do we see this? A guy with three different types of fastballs where none of them are actually elite, and he finds a way to get through some starts, but he maybe has a high whip, and it's kind of frustrating. Oh no. You are all going to hate this comp. This is my nightmare comp. Do you know what it is, Eric?
I don't, but
can you think about this for a second? A guy that has been around for about maybe 3-4 years.
Okay.
You know the name. He's had an opening day start. Who has a fastball that just gets hit really hard. He has a cutter that gets hit hard. He has a sinker that gets hit hard. He tries to do things with his slider and maybe it's a sweeper now and a curveball, And there's sometimes he gets whiffs on those, but they're not consistent enough. And he's a really frustrating guy to roster over the years in fantasy. And this year you're not drafting him. He's in the NL Central. He's on the Pirates.
You're talking about Mitch Keller.
I am. Isn't that terrifying?
Yeah, that's gross.
But here's the thing. That's the same kind of thing. He throws four-seamers, sinkers, and cutters, and he tries to get away with that with good command. And there are those days when that command works out and he looks so good. And then there are others, and he doesn't have good movement on his stuff. And I just sat there being like, uh-oh. And obviously, like, I do believe that Hunter Brown is better than Mitch Keller. It's just, I'm not seeing the thing that takes Hunter Brown to the next level. That makes me believe that he truly is a 115 whip guy and not this 127 that we saw last year, even though he had that good stretch last year. After the beginning of it, it was 162 innings of a 2.88 ERA and a 111 whip, 26% K rate. I get it. I really do. I'm just not seeing it in the arsenal. And the cutter change that happened to him, that he stopped using the sliders much, sure, that helped, but like, it just terrifies me. And I'm not in. I'm sorry.
Was a big breakout pitcher last year, despite being around forever. But your number 49 pitcher is Seth Lugo. And I think we have long thought, like, Seth Lugo, quality deep league, like 15-team league arm, great. Nothing he does is extraordinary. He's going to pitch a lot of innings. He's not going to hurt you anywhere. We saw him take that step forward last year. And I think it's maybe important not to overreact to that. Seth Lugo is still really good at taking one pitch and making it 3, taking 2 pitches and making them 5.
Yeah.
Has tremendous feel for his arsenal. Is not going to rack up huge strikeout totals, which will likely limit the overall fantasy upside. But, and I get that that's why he's ranked below, some of the guys like a Pepio or a Hunter Brown or, Rodon or whatever. But just rock solid, Seth Lugo.
Yeah, the way I see it is that he had a strikeout rate of about strikeout an inning. He had these ridiculous games also earlier in the season, where's 12 strikeouts, 10 strikeouts back to back. Everyone goes, "Oh my gosh, he is an ace." He also had 9.85 before then, and then all of a sudden it settled to 3, then 5, then 5, then 4, then 4. Right? He's someone who shouldn't really be a 22% strikeout rate guy. He needed those big major ones to get there. He's really like a 20%. And when you realize that, you go, "Oh, hold on. Wait, that's not quite as good." You don't want to be spending too high on a guy that should be expected for like a 20% strikeout rate. That said, the way they use his curveball is really good. It's a whiff heavy curve, and everything else that he throws is just to kind of get him to throw more of those and to make it so that he can just get guys out with that. So maybe a little bit of the slider too in the sweeper. But yeah, I feel like he should be a solid play. He's going to get you wins with the Royals going deep into games. He's going to have solid ratios in all likelihood. It could be like a 115 whip or something like that, 117, not like the greatest. Even though it was good last year, it could fall absolutely. But he should certainly help you out, and that's something of value to me. Is like, yeah, I could say this is like a Toby, but I have more confidence in his ratio performance than I do the guys that I have actually listed as the Toby, or like Toby but wants to be a Holly tier.
Right.
So Seth Lugo's over here.
It's funny discussing him next to your next starting pitcher, who is your number 50 overall starting pitcher, because they're total opposites in terms of that, like, reliability and health. And it's Reynaldo Lopez. And look, Reynaldo Lopez was great last year.
Sure was.
We talked about him, early on in the season, of like, we were talking about all these like converted relievers into starters, and us included, were big in on like AJ Puck, DL Hall, guys like that, when the answer was Garrett Crochet and Reynaldo Lopez all along.
The White Sox all had it,
Yeah, they had it the whole time.
Yeah.
Listen, Reynaldo Lopez has always been a if he was only healthy guy. He made clear improvements last year. However, Reynaldo Lopez also ended the year battling arm injuries that was on and off the IL multiple times. We thought he was going to get shut down, then he didn't. He came back, blah, blah, blah. So again, like, any of your concern of like, hey, he is a major injury risk, he still remains a major injury
Doesn't
risk
matter. It
despite
doesn't
what he did.
matter.
It doesn't matter, but that's why I think based on what he did last year, I think seeing him at 50 may make some people go, "Really? Look at his stats." And it's like, yes, the
Mm.
stats are very good, but the profile of the pitcher didn't change drastically.
Yeah, so at first glance, I mean, all I really need to say is an 87% left on base rate. Like, that's I could just call it a day and be like, "All right, guys, let's go," "That's it, fine." And then, honestly, that's just so ridiculous that we know it's not sustainable. I think the one that really just messes with me is the fact that he had a sub 8% walk rate, despite throwing this slider that he threw 30% of the time at a 57% strike rate. Like, that's the one that just gets me, is, like, that's your number 2 pitch, a pitch that under a 60% strike rate, and that means that you should have a lot more walks than you do, and he doesn't. He got out of it a ton. And sure, there's a curveball that's in there 11% of the time at like a 60% strike rate. Even that's just, it should still be like, no, 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 no. This is not a sub 8% walk rate, right? Um, we saw a peak season. We all know this.
Yes.
At the same time, he's in that rotation now with Atlanta, and it is a good thing to pitch for Atlanta. There are a couple of reasons. One, they generally like to let guys go long. I know Grant Holmes, the real estate broker, didn't as much, but that's because he was still getting stretched out and everything to be a starter in the first place. Two, you're going to get wins, guys. The second highest chance to win the World Series according to Fangraphs. And you're going to have a large offense behind you. So that's great. He still gets strikeouts. It's still a good fastball. It's still a whiff heavy slider and curve. And the fact that you're getting him this late means that, hey, you don't need him to work out.
Right.
I don't mean like doing push-ups and lifting weights work out. I mean, like, it doesn't need to actually be the greatest thing ever for you. So what you can do is you can just draft Reynaldo as your SP5 or 6 even, and then you feel good. Like, I want to emphasize the first week of the season goes by, you're going to look at your rotation and go, how many of these guys do I actually like? This is a feeling we get a ton, and it's like April 28th even, and you go, what the heck? Why do I have these 3 guys? They're not very good. Like, how did I draft them? You know? And you should just draft pitchers that are just generally good and effective. And like, yeah,
Fair.
Reynaldo Lopez is going to be good and effective. Okay. Like, this is why Zac Gallen is still over there because, yeah, he should be good and effective. It's fine. It's not like, craziness. It's not going to be a 5 ERA and like a 145 whip or something at the end of the year for those guys. Reynaldo Lopez should probably be still effective. So, and if he's not, you can just drop him and you'll know pretty quickly if he isn't.
Right.
So yeah, I'm all for it. It's just a matter of when he goes in drafts. And it's interesting. I don't know if I really should be crediting like the fantasy industry or just the smarts of all managers everywhere to look at this 199 ERA across 133 innings and say, no. Same thing they're doing really with Seth Lugo, a little differently. It's more that there are just so many good pitchers that this is the situation we're in. And you shouldn't be embracing that in your drafts. Recognize that at certain points, you get more value from pitchers than you do hitters and vice versa. So yeah, get Reynaldo at the end of whatever chain that is, because that's a really good ad.
There you go. You heard it here first. Just draft pitchers who are good.
Yeah. I mean, I know it
Um,
sounds crazy, but like, don't put yourself in situations where it's risk. Like, it could break. Find
Right.
yourself saying like, all right, I'm drafting this because I think it will be different, as opposed to like watching a guy be like, yeah, you expect him to pitch well and keep his team in the ball game all the time, right? There's a big difference between those two, and I try to emphasize that a lot with hipsters, because you could be looking at Taj Bradley and just be like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Why am I doing this to myself? You know,
Yes. Yes, you could do that a
and
lot when you're watching
I
Taj
don't think
Bradley.
you're going to be doing that really with Reynaldo Lopez, but if you do, then you'll be gone quicker than Taj Bradley, where you're still holding on to that hope. You
Right.
know,
You can't
so it's a big thing.
leave hope at the door, people.